portion of the program where we'll talk amongst ourselves while we let people file in, and we blast it on our social media accounts. So talk freely amongst yourselves. Tell your kids to go into the next room. Hey, you guys need to let me know if you hear my kid like loudly playing Fortnite on the other side of the wall.
Oh, this is it cussing with the Cowboys? Cussing at the that's what this is, right?
That's
okay.
What this is.
Shit, yeah.
And now it's on.
Get the darn kids out of here.
Yeah, baby.
It's automatic.
Okay, good.
We're rocking and rolling. We're live.
All right, we're live and we're tweeting. Hello, friends of the internet. It's us, your whiskey enjoying compadres from all over this great state of Texas. Welcome to Whisky Talk. This is episode 5 or 6? Do we know what episode is this? 7? This is 7?
7.
Wow, this is huge. I am Jeff Skinwade of the Ben and Skin Show. Somewhere on your Hollywood Squares panel is Ben Rogers of said show. He is also, don't touch that, Ben, that's gross. He is also the director of this broadcast, and he's incredibly uncomfortable doing it. He's been thrust into that position, but we think he does an incredible job. So make sure and leave a nice word to him in the comments section.
Tip, just a tip.
Are you saying tip?
Yes, leave a tip.
That's what I thought
plug.
you said.
Make a plug.
A plug.
That guy in the hat and the beard, well, I guess we're both wearing hats and beards. The guy who was just talking is Alex Elrod. I consider him the brand ambassador of Balcones whiskey down there in Waco. How you doing today, Mr. Elrod?
1 second, please.
Oh, look at that product placement. Drinking the big
I'm doing good. So cheers to y'all.
Drinking a delicious Kolsch from Rollertown Beer Works. And then the guy that's wearing the same hat that I wore showed up at the same hat party.
Same beard. Everything's pretty much the same.
The dominating distiller of the evening, it is Jared Hempstead. Hello, Jared.
How's it going, man?
It's going great for me. I'm wearing this hat because our mutual friend Adam, who's a nice beer and whiskey connoisseur, I saw Jared in a Balcones video on Instagram wearing this hat, and I didn't have it in my Balcones hat collection. And I think I left a message. It was a total click like thing. Hey, I need attention here. I need that hat. And so I got a text message from Adam. He goes, I'm driving through Waco. Do you really want this hat? By the way, here's a bottle of the High Plains single malt. I said, yes, I'll take both of those things. So Adam smuggled it back to North Dallas, and here I am wearing the same hat as you, Jared. So you inspired my fashion choice.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
That happens often, more than people are willing to admit, I think.
Oh, yeah. I saw it on Jared's head. Are you guys ready to celebrate Bourbon Heritage Month with this episode?
Yeah.
Yes. Can I start with the dumbest question, since it's kind of my role here? And I play myself. I like whiskey. It tastes good. I want to know, and I'm sorry for this layup. It's going to be the easiest question you've ever been asked, but we're talking all bourbons tonight. So what is technically the difference between bourbon and whiskey?
Yes.
Well, yeah. Bourbon is a whiskey.
Okay.
It is a whiskey is a parent category.
Night, everybody. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah. So that was great. Yeah, I think I've heard that a bunch too. People using bourbon and whiskey, and I guess they're talking about Scotch when they say whiskey, maybe, and bourbon is the other stuff. Oh, I don't know exactly how other people use it, but yeah. So the parent category for any grain-based spirit is going to be whiskey, and then bourbon specifically has a couple of unique rules about it. It has to be at least 51% corn, but there's no cap, as we'll find out tonight in our tasting, on how much corn you can have in it. But it has to be at least the majority of the grain is corn. It has to be aged in virgin oak, which most American whiskey that's true for. Yeah, and there's obviously straight, there's bonded, there's a whole bunch of other, tangents you can get on that have different requirements to meet those standards as well. But bourbon, a lot of people don't know this. You can use up to 2.5% of what they consider harmless coloring and flavoring, and most people do that just for consistency, so that batch to batch, your whiskey is on the shelf and it's the same color as they've seen it every other time. Doesn't taste like anything. Or if you're trying to correct for, we've got a batch, we dumped it, it's not quite as tannic or it's not as spicy, that you have some flavor additives that you use to keep it consistent and keep it on profile. We do none of that, but every category, every other sub-style of whiskey in the US that's allowed, unless you're using the straight designation, and then it's not allowed for anything that's considered straight. But bourbon, it's not allowed, period.
So when I was first kind of, trying to learn distinctions and stuff, someone a very long time ago told me, no, if it's to be considered bourbon, it has to come from Kentucky. And I know that is not accurate, but I'm curious as to why someone might have said that. Does that have to do with the straight bourbon distinction?
No, I mean, straight bourbon can be made anywhere too. I think everything we're trying tonight is straight. But that just means it's 2 years old and doesn't have any of those flavor and coloring additives. I think that's just because for so long, the large majority of bourbon being made in the U.S. was being made in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And even that's a little bit misleading because of how much is made in Indiana at a really massive facility. And so they contract still for a lot of brands, but the best well-known brands are all, historically have all been Kentucky brands. So.
Well, we'll probably learn a little bit more of this as we go down the rabbit hole here, but we are going to try 3 different spirits tonight. We are going to do the Texas pot still bourbon. We are going to do the wheated, which, as you'll find out, might be very difficult for you to find. And we're also going to do the Texas blue corn, which some people think is probably your best offering. We can debate all that. Where would you guys like to begin?
I would say we would start in that order. We would do it in that order you just said: pot still first, and then wheated, and then the blue corn.
Let's do it. So I want to start with you, Alex. Why did Balcones start doing the Texas pot still bourbon? You guys have been doing this right around a year and a half. How long?
Year and a half now.
2 years.
Okay.
And forgive me, my internet might be messing up here, but is it 2 years? Now year and a half.
I was going to say, I don't think it's been a full 2 years, man, but maybe, who knows?
Half. Pots. Sorry, my internet's really messing up. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Pot still bourbon is a unique amalgamation, I think, for Balcones, because we focus on, of course, copper pot distillation, and so mostly single malts. And historically, I think Jared puts it really interesting spin on the conversation piece, that we've never disliked bourbon. I think we've all actually really enjoyed bourbon, but our focus is on single malt. So to make a bourbon, something that at this stage, because we have made blue corn bourbon for a very long time, but it is a very robust, very large pour of whiskey, very unique, being that it's 100% corn. To make something that was 4 grain and at an approachable price point is kind of shocking for Balcones. So to release this and see what it's done in the market has been pretty amazing, because it's right around 29, 30, $32 maybe. Yeah. Sometimes a little more affordable, depending on where you're at. And to be able to put this out and then really shock people that, Balcones can make bourbon. And of course, it's not going to taste like Kentucky, but that's not the goal, right? We're going to make Texas whiskey. We're going to make Balcones whiskey. We use copper pot stills, so really viscous, bigger mouthfeel, still a big emphasis on the grain. So it is something a little bit, as an alternative to Kentucky style, but I mean, we like it. I'm sure it's Jared should talk about the blending process, because that's going to be probably by far the most arduous thing to talk about, because I'm sure it's not very fun. But pot still bourbon, it's really cool. And I think Jared should definitely talk about the origin of the name, because it's it's kind of, I would say very unique to be putting the word pot still on the front of a bourbon label. So yeah, pot still.
Yeah, there's a couple layers to that. Because we pot distill everything. It's been years back, but I think maybe the third or fourth time either an industry journalist or another peer brought it up as like, man, you guys don't really emphasize that. Most people probably haven't had, if they've had a lot, mostly Kentucky bourbon or Indiana bourbon from MGP under all the various brands that they source for. The chances that people have 99% of the bourbon they've ever put to their lips has been come off a column still. Anyway, so I was kind of encouraged to like accentuate that, and we started putting it on the bottom of a lot of the labels. And then we wrestled around with an expression name, like we often do for things. And sometimes, as you know, if you look at our bourbon line that's in front of us for tonight, they're all pretty straightforward and very descriptive. I don't mind having names for things, but we all know this even in beer world. You walk up and there's you go to the brew pub and there's a chalkboard and there's 20 things on the tap and you're like, none of these names tell me anything about what that beer is.
Right.
And so it can be a little bit it can overcomplicate things a little bit. But yeah, we enjoyed by far the largest, section of the American whiskey shelf is obviously going to be bourbon. So we definitely enjoyed in our younger years kind of skirting the obvious things. There's a few obvious things that a lot of small producers do. Almost everyone leads with bourbon and then follows up with a rye. And almost everybody in the past, at least, was doing, a vodka and a gin. So they had something that could get out the door quickly while the whiskey was aging, so they didn't go broke and waiting for years for the whiskey to be ready. We definitely prided ourselves on not doing those things. And really, the story of them finally talking me into doing a bourbon for the core lineup, it was a very interesting conversation, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. But we'd never had the luxury of having sales folks, out there, boots on the ground, in the early years. And we finally got to a point where we had enough people out there. They know what they hear from bars. They know what they're hearing from consumers. They know what they hear from liquor stores. And we sat down and had a meeting and kind of compiled all this experience from all of our folks. And the question came up, just like, what are some of the barriers to entry? Like, what keep people from getting into our brand or buying our stuff or being, continuing to buy? And it's pretty straightforward. If bourbon accounts for fill in the blank, whatever the massive amount of American whiskey consumption that bourbon takes up, a lot of people come up and they say, hey, let me try your bourbon. Well, we actually don't have one, and they're already gone. You've got about 1.8 seconds, which is an eternity in the NBA, but it is not an eternity when you're trying to get someone a sample of whiskey in front of in their mouth. So
there's no timeouts. Yeah,
you're out of timeouts. All your I was going to say all your starters have fouled out, but that's not true. But so a lot of people drink within category. I mean, you guys have probably seen the same thing. People are like, I'm a Scotch drinker, and someone says, man, I got this really rare bottle of Heaven Hill I picked up at the distillery from the gift shop, and somebody goes, no, I don't drink bourbon. Okay. Right. And that's changing with our generation and younger. That's definitely changing. People are way more experimental and broad with their. If they like whiskey, they drink it. Oh shit! If they like brown spirits, they don't just drink whiskey these days. They're into rum, they're into cognac, they're into whatever. Yeah. But the category was a problem. Not having a product in the main category that most people buy in. As you guys know, a lot of our stuff's pretty high proof. I don't think a 46 or 47 is very high, because that's about as low as you can go with a pot still without chill filtering. But for a lot of people, if you're used to buying 40, 80 proof stuff, this is high. Hey, I got a
hug.
Man.
So, hey, when your kids still want to hug you, I feel like that's going to be diminishing here at some point. I got to take it.
Oh yeah. No, yeah.
It's going to go away at some point, right? Like
I was walking out the door, my daughter, my older, she's about to be 10. She stood up on the couch, and I mean, she's not that tall. I mean, she would still look right around here. Give me a hug before I walked out the door, because I have to come back to the office because my 2-year-old will stand wherever I'm at in the house and either yell if I'm in another room, bang on the door. Just the one time I tried to do post-COVID, like a meeting from home or a tasting from home, she just cried at the back window I was on our back porch and she just cried for like an hour. My wife was like, "Yeah, you're doing those at work." So I come back to the office for these. Anyway, but yeah, she gave me a big hug before I left and told me she missed me already. So
That's awesome. Awesome. It's the best.
it won't last forever.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me finish up. So the category thing is something that people would hear consistently. The proof, like I said, we can only go to 46, 47 without chill filtering. That's as low as we can go. But until this product, we only had two things, Baby Blue and Rumble, that were below 50, which once again isn't high to us, but I get it. If you're used to 80 proof, that's a big deal. And then the last thing is pretty clear to anyone who buys craft anything. If you're buying small producer wine, you're buying craft beer, or you're buying craft whiskey, they're expensive. Obviously, AB can pump out beer cheaper than Rollertown. It's just, I mean, it's just the way it goes. So those were all things the gauntlet was thrown down in this meeting with Alex and a bunch of other folks, the sales folks, that was like, can we do something to address this laundry list of things that keep people either from trying us to begin with or to continue to buy? And in my mind, I kind of overlaid that with this other weird experience I've had where there's a specific person I have in mind that I always use as the best example of this. But we have a friend who is a social worker. His wife's a social worker. I used to be a licensed social worker. I haven't practiced and my license has lapsed. It's been a long time. But good friends of ours from back in the day, and him and sometimes his wife both volunteer when we have our big like concerts and like release parties and stuff at the distillery back when that still happened. And I was over at their house for, I think it was a baby shower or something. We were over at their house and I was like, "Oh man, you got a pretty nice Balcones spread here." And he was like, "Every single one of those I got, we give volunteers get to take a bottle home with them when they're here for an event." He had never bought anything. And then it like dawned on me, like, yeah, you guys are social workers. You're probably living on 60 combined if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And he just kind of like made a passing comment that he never buys it. And every time there's a volunteer opportunity, he takes it so he can get his free bottle. And it just kind of hits you that like, man, no one set out to do this to be completely inaccessible to their friends, their family, their neighbors. And so combining with what I was hearing from the folks in the field and that philosophically, the goal was never to be just out of people's range. It was just kind of a challenge that was thrown down. Like, can we do something in this range? And I said, if we have a bunch of different bourbon recipes, some of them have products that they end up in, some don't. Let's pull everything we've got and just see where it's at and see if there's some hybrid of all these different bourbons that we lay down that we can make something really cool out of. And we had never done one at 47. I was like, if that doesn't work, 46, if that doesn't work and we don't like it, we're not doing it. So we have 4 recipes. One we've never released. We have the 100% blue corn, which we're going to get to, which is an annual special release and usually at cast strength. We have a wheated recipe that once again has been we released twice, both times just at the distillery in 2018, 2019. We have our high rye, which is very similar to our 100% rye. It's about 39% of that recipe is our rye whiskey, our rye 100, just kind of squeezed into, instead of 100%, 39%. And then the rest of it's the blue corn. And then we have a bourbon that we've never released any of that's just a 2 grain. So it's 55 corn and 45 golden promise. So it's like a hybrid of the blue corn whiskeys and our single malt, just those 2 by themselves. But we have them in all different ages. We have them in all different kinds of barrels. And so every time we sit down to blend this product, the proportions of those ingredients has changed because the spice you want might be in the high malt the first time. And then the next round, we used up the old ones of that. Now the next ones up are younger, but the old blue corns have, we got some French oak over here. We can grab that tannin from here. So it's kind of messy and it's probably the most complicated. We never really know. We have less of a roadmap for it than some of our other products, but I was intentionally trying to make it accessible in all those areas as well as palate wise. But at the same time, if anybody who likes a good bourbon, there are ones that don't have the kick and the balls and the punch, and you're like, man, I thought I was drinking bourbon. So there's a fine line there of something that's approachable and not too challenging that you can pick apart if you want to, but also has enough oomph to be like, yeah, no, bourbon should have some muscle and some structure to it. So, yeah.
And that's great. And that's Alex, on the show, Skin and I, when we're talking about Balcones, a lot of times we will say, all right, the pot still bourbon is the best way to dive in if you haven't tried anything in the portfolio yet. If you haven't tried a bunch of things. And obviously there's a lot of great places to jump in and a lot of fantastic whiskeys. And I'm just curious for you, Alex, do you think that's a fair thing to say to somebody who's never tried Balcones if we're saying, hey, why don't you make your first one the Texas pot still bourbon?
I mean, I think the vast majority of whiskey consumers are probably, they've had a level of familiarity with the style of bourbon. So to gravitate towards that again, because the price point is so accessible, I think it is a pretty great place to jump in. Instead of diving into the deep end of a cask strength single malt, or if it is kind of bourbon season and there is blue corn bourbon on the shelf, I mean, you should probably grab it because it's going to go quick. But if it's your first bottle, to grab something that's going to be extremely affordable, you're not going to have buyer's remorse. It's approachable proof. You're going to be able to find it all over Texas. And I mean, we're distributing it all over the United States now at this point. So it's in every major market for us. I think it's a pretty great way to discover Balcones and at least begin to pick apart like what's going on, right? Like, wow, this is way more oily, way more intense for this proof, but still very drinkable. And the grain is still very much present in this pour. What's going on? What is, like, let me learn a little bit more about this brand of whiskeys. I saw they had other things on the shelves. And, our hope is that people do fall in love with this, of course, and maybe then venture out, because then at $10 more, you start getting into baby blue and rye and our brand new lineage single malt. And then from there, that, helps them graduate up to maybe another level, and they can jump into even then True Blue and Brimstone. And so there's this kind of really nice stair step effect to our price points and the way that they're displayed on the shelf. So plus it's bright red label, so it stands out. So it looks pretty cool.
I got two comments I was going to say, because it does kind of relate to lineage in the same sense that they both had a similar goal. And it can feel really gross even to people in the industry. I find phrases and words coming out of my mouth that are kind of industry language to talk about things. Like, you don't ever want to talk about, we're sitting here talking about whiskey, for God's sake. You don't want to say product,
Right.
Yeah.
Moving product. That's gross. But so to say that this has a specific place in the portfolio is the kind of shit that I would say and hear, and I don't blink about it when I'm in the office, but like, it's whiskey. And I was asked a question the other day about gateway. And I think to me, there's a negative connotation to something being called a gateway.
Right.
And we went through lineage, and even some of my hardcore, friends that are big nerds and collectors, some of them are like, man, this might be my favorite one. And it's the 47, it's cheaper, all that. So I think the idea that a gateway can be kind of a throwaway, you're not really going to work on it, you're not really going to care, you're going to just kind of like, yeah, just give them whatever, it's younger, it's cheaper. There's something about that offends me. There, especially because of the phase of life I'm in with single malts specifically. Mm-hmm. I find myself either adding a lot of water if it is cask strength, or enjoying some, some 43% stuff. Like super light, very different from what we do. Maybe that's why. It's because it's so different from what we do. When I go just for fun, I tend to like go in a different direction than the stuff we make for work, because I'm around it all the time. So just all that to say, to imply that something, or even like a Pilsner, like to imply that isn't just as complicated and just as hard to craft and do well, and that it's somehow throwaway just because it seems more familiar is a little bit problematic for me. I get the concept, and I get why people talk about things being kind of gateways or entry points. But if we didn't think they were standalone, then I wouldn't feel okay about making them,
I think the other thing about all that too is whenever you're recommending something to somebody, you sort of need to know a little bit about the person you're recommending it to.
Sure.
Right. I saw this conversation breaking out on Twitter because Rolling Stone has gone back and made some changes in their 500, best records of all time. And there's this whole thing going on about, hey, they put some jazz records in here. And I see these people arguing about John Coltrane. Well, man, there's a lot of music that Coltrane made that's a little bit inaccessible for people if they're listening to jazz for the first time. So I just don't come out and go, yeah, check out this free jazz record. Like you need to know something about the person that you're recommending it to. What do you guys usually drink? What do you like? And I know we're focusing on the bourbon because it's bourbon heritage, but there's a really interesting conversation to be had about lineage because of a lot of different, let's just say, bases that it touches, so to speak. And so there are similarities, I think, with the pot still bourbon and the lineage when you're recommending Balcones to people. And all right, what do you normally drink? What do you like? Well, have you thought about this?
We've been doing every week we have a sensory panel with the staff upstairs, and every other week is a beer week now that we're making beer too, or whether it's education on like styles or styles that we play in, that also like, hey, let's get some stuff from all over the country and taste other versions of that. Sometimes we do blind, sometimes not. But yeah, we did a pretty entry-level Scotch lineup the other day, quote unquote entry level. And something that I already knew and wasn't surprised by, but watching people once the reveal happened and to realize that the first sample had been just the straightforward Glenfiddich 12. And I've been there too, where like I've gone through phases where them and a few other Scotch brands are just like, I don't even look at the brand. Like that's entry stuff. And then you get over yourself a decade later and you go back and you're like, wait a second, I was the problem. These guys are awesome.
Yeah.
There's nothing throwaway about some of that stuff. I'm not saying there's not throwaway stuff on the bottom shelf in a plastic handle at all of our liquor stores, but yeah. Anyway, just because something's the most accessible and the obvious, it's meant to be the obvious. Like here's our introduction to you. Doesn't mean it has to be trash or that it has to be kind of a neglected, overlooked. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, do you guys want to move on to the weeded, or is there more stuff you want to say about pot still?
It's if anybody, well, the last Ben plug that, I mean, you should be able to find this anywhere. If anybody's intrigued at all by the affordability, the accessibility, the fact that it's still made with all the same grains that we're using in all of our other whiskeys, you can find this just about anywhere. The mom and pop should have it. Ask for it if they don't. All the chains, the big boys carry it. Specs, Total Wine, Goody, Seagulls, Twin Liquors. Everybody has it. So this is a really, really easy find. So yeah, pot still bourbon.
Right on. I'm going to sip some water and then start smelling this weeded that I've poured over here.
Do it.
Okay, for starters, why is the weeded not more pervasive? You guys can only buy this at the distillery, correct?
We've only released it twice at the distillery, and Alex may know more. I don't remember off the top of my head. We are releasing some this year, but I don't know exactly what that's going to look like.
I think it's distillery only again.
I think it's going to be distillery only, but I don't know volumes, proof, age, any of that because we haven't blended the blend yet. And I think that's for November, December. Do you remember, Alex? It'll be at the end of the year.
Let's say the holidays.
Holiday time.
Yeah.
Q4, the
SOND.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is we're young enough, and some of these recipes are young enough too, that we keep finding out things about them. We like the weeded fine, and I've mostly been a high rye guy, but every once in a while you get a nice weeded bourbon, and it's a pretty special thing. But we started doing all these as kind of like just exploration, trying to figure out. And I think we had a bunch of them that ended up getting like 3 years old, and we had to sit down and we found this whole date of barrels that were weeded. And we were like, oh, wow, we haven't been laying down much weeded lately. And this is really good. Turns out we had just been using it too young and it hadn't really like peaked yet. And we were like, oh crap. Hey, Dustin, when are we making weeded again? It's not on the schedule. Put it on the schedule. We need more. So it's probably our favorite component of the pot still once it gets to a certain age. But we are using the bulk of it is going into pot still. So yeah, that's the tricky game going forward. When we were smaller and just kind of like no holds barred, lay down whiskey every day and do whatever you want. At some point, what you lay down and what you sell need to match, turns out. So yeah, figuring out the volumes of like how much of these things to lay down. Me and Gabe very much want to have we're laying down more wheated so that we aren't eating it all up in pot still for the future. Because we would like to have wheated be a regular, if not regular on the shelf product, then at least like a special release every year that could come out at a pretty decent volume. We have a bunch. We have a bunch that's like 4 and 5 years old right now. We had contemplated a bonded release, but I think we're leaning towards not. Bonded would be 100 proof and all from the same season. But every time we proof it down to 100, we're kind of like, man, I think I liked it more at cask. So we're on the fence. We're on the fence about how much of it we're going to put out and what format it's going to be in. But
dude, this is extraordinary. I'd never had this before. This is insane.
This is 61. What
61.3? Yeah.
This goes straight to the nose. When you said,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Obviously everything hits everybody different. But this is one of my favorites I've ever had from you guys. I mean, I love them all, but this is extraordinary, man. I really enjoy
this is one of our favorites. This is one of our favorites too. The two traditional flavoring grains. So bourbon, like I said, it's always 51% minimum. Most bourbons are more than that. Some are as high as 75% corn. Mm-hmm. Traditionally, without enzymes back in the day, you needed malted barley to get the enzymes that are going to convert the whole cook from higher chain starches to fermentable sugars. So most people would have like 5 to 6%, maybe up to like 10, 11, 12 for the malt portion. And then the rest of it would be one of your two flavoring grains. And rye, typically, I don't know why, I don't agree, but most people characterize it as being spicy. And it does have some compounds that are unique to it from other grains that have like a cinnamon spice to them. But there's a sourness to rye to me that is always like telltale in my mind. And then wheated is softer. It's sweet. It's a little more subtle and understated. But obviously with our barrel program and with the climate here, it's not as it's still bigger and got a lot going on. But because of that, we used we've probably talked about our barrels and stuff and the custom toasting and charring and all that. But we definitely used some lighter impact barrels. We didn't really want to load it up with just like all the darker smoky and darker chocolate and all those notes that we have in some of our barrels that we use in malt and some of our other bourbons. Kind of wanted to let it peek through a little bit. So,
and this is a Texas wheat that's making that flavoring grain, right, Jared?
I think so. I think outside of this one would be all Texas grain. The specialty rye, I think, is one of the only things we're still getting other than Golden Promise from out of state.
Right.
So our high rye and our rye would have some of the German specialty malts, but all the wheat, all the corn we're getting, yeah.
So like the wheat in Maker's Mark, for example, the basic Maker's product, does that come out of Kentucky or are they getting that from somewhere else?
That's a good question. I really don't know.
This is right at 51% corn, or do you guys go more on the wheated?
We've honestly changed it around so much. I would have to check for this recipe. The corn's probably going to be around 55. We also go higher on the malt in our early iterations of wheated in 2014, 15 at our old building. We had tried a few at the pretty classic 5 and 6%, and then we doubled it and then we tripled it. So we had some at 5, 6, 12, and 18. And we ended up settling a little bit back from the 18. So it's more like 15. So kind of uncommon for a lot of wheateds. Our malt and our wheat and malt are actually way closer to each other than would normally be the case. But the fruity stuff we were getting from the barley, we just thought was
awesome.
Just exceptional and really complemented everything else that was going on. We've also laid down versions with different corns. We have some yellow Texas again. I think we have some white that we're going to be laying down soon just to try. And we have some that is still the blue corn, but not roasted because our blue corn is almost always roasted. It's on its way. And like a lot of stuff we do, it's fun to share with y'all and other people, like stuff that's in process and kind of get to see where things are headed and the evolution of some of the whiskeys. But we're really happy. I mean, Gabe especially, I'm super happy with how this turned out.
Yes.
It dances with Shiner and a few other things as Gabe is my blending partner, by the way, for anyone who hasn't seen the show before or hasn't met Gabe. He goes back and forth on what's his favorite, but the Wheater's always in his top 2 or 3. So he definitely is working very hard to make sure in the years to come we have a lot more that can go out regular.
Hey, I'm curious I mean, this is having such a profound impact. Like I'm loving this. Does that mean, based on what you say, that my personal palate would lean more towards wheat and away from rye? Or
Maybe.
is that just okay?
I mean, it could be. This is, once again, none of our stuff's super typical for Kentucky. Yeah, I mean, go get you some wheaters. It's high rye definitely dominates the bourbon field. There's really not a whole lot, and some of the best wheaters have become impossible to find in the last 2 or 3 years. All the Ranger Weller products is one good example. But yeah, chase you down some wheaters. Makers is probably the easiest to get your hands on these days.
And Makers is really good.
Yeah, the 40. I've really been digging the 46, and
It's excellent.
there's so many that they finally. I mean, they went for so long without doing any new expressions. In the last few years, they've definitely they hit it with 46, and then cast strength started coming, and they just kind of keep going.
I think I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, it was really hard to find the cast strength makers, and a guy that worked there got me a bottle of it, and it was like a real special thing that I had at the house that I would only drink with people that really were into it, because I didn't want to quote unquote waste it. But it is a little more pervasive now, and you see that Maker's 46 out a lot more than you used to 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, I remember the first time the cast strength came to Texas, and I freaked out and bought, I cleared the shelf kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was a few years before it was regular, but yeah, I'm surprised when I walk in liquor stores and see it now, because the rest of the industry is kind of going the opposite direction. It's like stuff that used to be everywhere is now invisible. And you got to be one of the people that's on a call list to even get notified that Weller 12 showed up, and it used to be everywhere in Texas, especially just case stacks. Yeah.
Okay, quick timeout. One of our good friends, Jason, who is a talented DJ and videographer and just technical wizard.
Ooh.
He says, that's a dope shirt Jared's rocking right there. So you're getting compliments on that shirt, brother.
I'm assuming that means he knows.
Oh, yeah, he knows.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
Showcase that bad boy.
Yep. This is probably, not everybody likes instrumental music, but these guys were a Georgia band. Probably the band I've seen live more times than any, probably 12, 15 times. Man or Astroman from Georgia. They were a super weird kind of post-rock meets surf. They had this whole backstory that they were aliens that crashed on Earth, and they went to AutoZone to get parts to fix their ship. Everything was really expensive, and so they looked around, they turned on the TV, and they decided that the best way for them to squeeze dollar bills out of us feeble humans was to play us rock and roll music. So they started a band. But yeah, they wouldn't break character. Their sets were elaborate, and they had spacesuits and lights, and yeah, they were a good time. Anybody who's never listened to Man or Astroman, go give them a good listen. They're rad, super rad.
Recommending whiskey and recommending music all at the same time. It's Whisky Talk episode.
I mean, do we really? Surprisingly, we don't actually talk sports much on here. It seems like that would happen more, but it doesn't. Maybe you guys, like us with the whiskey, maybe you would rather do something else, because that's what we do all the time.
End up arguing about basketball.
But yeah, I got something special for you. But I was gonna say, in that vein, yeah, maybe it's whiskey music talk, because I do feel like we do spend a solid 25% of the time on music, but.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're doing.
Okay, I see what's happening there.
Man.
Come on. Look at that backdrop.
Hey, what did you do?
Did you make that?
No.
Did you do anything special?
There's Pop.
Hey, Jared, did you do anything special a couple of days ago?
Anything special a couple of days ago?
3 days ago?
Is that Monday?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the music, me and my daughter's songs.
No. I was talking about when it was 9/21/20.
Oh, you're talking about sports stuff.
I'm talking about Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, and Manu Ginobili all sitting down in front of Pop on 9/20.
Yeah. No, I don't have a whole lot of like. I'm not nostalgic in quite that way. And we were talking about it before we even got on the air, I think. Robinson, I was living in South America at the time, and we're from Texas, so unlike a lot of Texans, I don't have that animosity of like, oh, I'm a Spurs guy, so like hate the Rockets or what, all that. I don't get into all that. Like Texas consistently in almost every major sport has killer teams like all the time. So that's like rad. Before Kawhi left, it was like, man, can you imagine if the Mavs were having the year they're having, the lineup the Mavs got right now, Kawhi's still in San Antonio and the Rockets where they're at. I mean, that's nuts. That's a nuts for those three lineups to be in one state. Anyway, but yeah, it was Robinson, man. My mom's parents live in San Antonio. They always have. My grandfather took me to a couple Spurs games when I was like in 7th grade. I was there for Rodman's first game, but yeah, when the Admiral hit the NBA, it was a pretty big deal for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about the Weeded, or do you want to move on to Pots or to Blue Corn?
I think it's because I know Jared's not going to say it. We just won gold best in class at Whiskeys of the World for this product, which is pretty cool.
You're talking about the Weeded.
The Weeded bourbon, yeah, which is pretty cool. I also know that's also like part of that. It's not fun because you can't find it. As you might have heard, it's on the blending calendar, so there will be another iteration. It will most likely be distillery only. So people will have to keep their eyes peeled on social media and like newsletter, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff in order to get, a shot at the next wave of it. But Whiskeys of the World is one of the publications that we do like. We more or less trust their reviews. So it's pretty cool to see that, that they reviewed something that's out of Texas so favorable. So that and Blue Corn Bourbon, which, we can transition to, also got a best in class award for the bourbon category of products, technically 5 years and under. But Blue Corn Bourbon, we've been making since 2015.
I'm trying to remember if our first release was 14 or 15.
14 it was 14.
There. I think it may have been late. It may have been late 14.
But yeah, most everybody knows this is like, they make all these single malts, they make all these cask strength products. But we have actually been making a bourbon for quite a while. It's very much predictable, if you will, with Balcones because it is 100% Texas blue corn. It's a big bomb. It's 64% this year. So we do all have a bit of a sneak peek because this hasn't come out yet. But at least us here, this is the newest bottling of it. So yeah, 64%. Beautiful blue wax seal, the only product we have with the blue wax seal, which is pretty cool. But this is definitely one of my favorites. I love the Weeded as well, but this one has a soft spot in my heart because I think really the Blue Corn line, Baby Blue, True Blue Cask, Blue Corn Bourbon is really what drew me into Balcones many moons ago. And now I get paid to talk about it. So yeah, Blue Corn Bourbon. And Jared, why would you say that this is, at least for us, maybe at the end of the three of these, look at flavor profile? Yeah.
The most obvious reason we laid down the Blue Corn Bourbon and to begin with, and I think maybe that was 2012 or 13, we bought some big barrels. Back then we didn't really play with a whole lot of virgin oak in a large format. But we're making this 100% corn whiskey all the time. And it was like, oh wait, we can make bourbon without having to like come up with a completely different process and recipe. We just divert some of that into used barrels for corn whiskeys and some of it into new barrels for bourbon. So we did. And there's always a little bit of French oak that I throw into here, sometimes a little European, but always some French. And French is very tannic. It's dry. It's kind of astringent. For people who aren't familiar with what tannin is like, the easiest way I always use, especially for someone in the South, is when you overbrew tea. You make some sweet tea and you overbrew it. That's tannin. So, which is always there in varying degrees in any barrel aged product. But so this has a little bit more of that. And the French oak, there's a floralness and a minerality to French oak that's very different from the typical vanilla caramel stuff from American. So there's always a little bit of that in the mix. I mean, you guys can see it's not quite opaque, but I mean, that's a French oak. That's a pretty common French oak thing. It's not opaque, but it's pretty, I mean, this is almost like a cola, kind of hue and opacity.
Compared to Mirador.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, even compared to the other two we've had tonight, I mean, it's pretty,
Since you brought it up,
A lot of wood extraction there.
I had Mirador sitting by.
Nice. Yeah, blue corn bourbon.
What do you
And
guys-
is that a special stand you have there that just
It's levitating on my wiener.
sure?
No, I get asked about that special stand all the time.
Your wiener?
Yeah.
No, I just have this thing here. It's set up to make it levitate here. It's so awesome.
Right by that. Who's that? Is that boy band? Who's that? Right?
See, that's the thing.
Justin Bieber right there.
See, Jared got so sick of looking at our Luca and Dirk, and you got Dirk over there that he had to respond with the Spurs. I respect it.
Yeah,
I respect
Man.
it. Okay, so I got to ask you guys about this though. Like, what are you guys? I want to know from you guys, you three, what you're picking up on the nose of this.
Yeah, and this is the newest batch. This is unreleased. It's to be released soon. So this is. I mean, I guess Jared just blended this recently, so it can be more familiar. But
I've blended a lot of things since then.
that's true.
So I'm a little bit stopped up, but I feel like I smell syrup. Like good, like sweet syrup, like maple syrup.
I could go with the maple. There's a solvent quality that's not quite like. I feel like during COVID, everyone's solvent vocabulary is going to be so much improved. It's going to the whiskeys are going to start reminding them of certain wipes or certain sprays.
It's got a Lysol,
but it's not quite isopropyl, which is more like hospital like rubbing, but it's also not quite acetone. It's in, which is fingernail polish remover, but it's hanging around in those areas. But the tannin too, to me, always implies berries, cherries, plum skin, that kind of stuff. There's plenty of it really can really darkly caramelize, like burnt almost sugar.
Yeah. The creme brulee like that, or at least I always associate with creme brulee just because I don't often like torch and caramelize sugar in really any other time in my life. So I always say creme brulee, but really what I'm thinking about is just kind of caramelized sugar.
Or like I mean, we're in Texas. There's absolutely no reason you should be putting any kind of glaze on your barbecue. But if you were to do something like that, because you're a heathen and a Yankee, if you did have some sort of glaze on, like some ribs, and it gets smoked and kind of like on the burnt tips and stuff, there's a little bit of just like sweet stuff that's just really, really, really charred up.
Yeah.
But there's some light stuff too. There's almost some like floral stuff. One of our favorite notes in house that sounds like BS, but like once you land on a good way to convey an idea, especially to your creative collaborators, it tends to stick. But we'd always talk about flower shop, and there's something about the green stems and the humid environment, and there's floral smells in the air, but they're not specific because they're all mixed in together. So flower shop has become this way of articulating this thing that we notice sometimes. And I'm not very good with flowers. People are like, it's jasmine. No, it's not. It's lavender. I'm like, I don't know if I just haven't been around enough flowers or, scented soap in my life. But
I was going to say, if someone says lavender, I'm like, what soap are you talking about? Is that over there? Or?
Yeah. Mouthfeel on this is really rich.
Yeah.
Like very big mouth coating, really oily.
There's totally that pancake syrup thing.
Yeah. Which I like. Earlier today, I did a radio show with a guy who said he's never had a waffle he didn't like.
Tell me the last waffle you had that you're like, this sucks, and you didn't finish it.
Man, I can't remember the last time I had a waffle.
I know that's same. That's
what?
I'm sorry. I'm a pancake guy.
Oh, I am too.
You can like both. They're not mutually exclusive, Elrod.
Yeah.
No, you gotta. There's a line in the sand, and it's full of syrup, and you stay on one side or the other.
I will say this: if I have a waffle, I feel like I have to have fresh strawberries with it.
Oh.
I want syrup, fresh strawberries with my waffle.
What a
Okay, so crazy plug here for not Ben's plug. Like that's One of the first places when I started at Balcones, which was actually 4 years ago, like a couple weeks ago, which is crazy. So I guess like cheers to me for that. Thank you, Jared, for.
I can't believe it. I had the under. It was like 2 years, and I had the under. So good for you, brother.
Pay up, mother. Anyways, one of the first places, there's the Jewel Hotel in downtown Dallas.
Yeah.
Historically, maybe I would think most known for Midnight Rambler, one of the best bars in the country, cocktail
awesome.
bars. Which is actually like their love of classic music, soul music. It's phenomenal, Chad and Christy. But I went to the CBD, which is the restaurant there, and for the longest time they were making a maple syrup that was infused with baby blue, Balcones baby blue, for their brunch menu. So they would do like loaded fried chicken and waffles. It was like an elevated chicken and waffles, and they used baby blue and incorporated it in their like house-made like syrup sauce. So
I gotta say, I'm not a big sweet breakfast. Isn't really my jam, man.
Yeah,
I don't hate it, but it feels like dessert.
It does.
Eggs and meat kind of guy.
Yeah.
And if you have pancakes and stuff, you better keep that syrup. I don't want to hear all this crap about running the sausage through the syrup and all that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I need a separate plate for my pancakes.
They can be on there, but they're not getting syruped until all the eggs and meat are gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
I need to tell an incredible Midnight Rambler story since you brought it up.
Ooh.
Obviously, me and Ben consistently worship at the altar of Dirk, and we love the man. And so for a number of years before the COVID, he would have his big celebrity baseball game, the Heroes game, and it'd have all these different Cowboys and Mavericks and not Rangers because baseball season, but retired Rangers and celebrities. And it was a really cool thing. And me and Ben would get to host it. And then he would have this party the night before to thank everyone for flying in and all this stuff. And so one year, one of the big benefactors of the event that would donate lots of money is a really great man named Tim Headington. And he actually owns that Jewel Hotel. He's a wonderful man, and he supports a lot of charities. And Ben and I really, really like the guy. And so because he was a big donor of the charity, we had the party the night before at the Midnight Rambler. But it was on the far west wall. There's a private room back there. Okay, so it's usually not open. So he had it back there, but we could go get cocktails, and the Rambler makes amazing cocktails, etc. Well, it just so happened that Steven Tyler, the lead singer of Aerosmith, was staying at the Jewel, and so he was in the Midnight Rambler. And then there's this wall, and then on the other side of the wall is like all these Mavericks and different things. And Steven Tyler heard that Dirk was on the other side of the wall. And so the 4'11" diminutive Steven Tyler left his scene to go and introduce himself to Dirk. Whoa. And Ben and I were standing there watching that going, that is a really cool level of awesome because, Steven Tyler, if you like Aerosmith or not, he's rock royalty.
Oh, yeah.
And for him to go, oh, my God, Dirk Nowitzki's next door. I need to go meet him.
That's funny.
I thought that was really effing cool. Like, we've seen a lot of cool things happen around Dirk, but that was one of what I thought was one of the neatest things I had ever seen, that someone like that wanted to go meet Dirk. Because Dirk's kind of got to go, Steven Tyler's here. I better go to him. It's just, it's just a really neat thing to see, man. And that is an incredible bar. You're right. That place is super.
That bar's awesome. And you also it was so awkward because you have a Steven Tyler tattoo on your whole torso.
Yeah.
It's enormous.
And it was crazy because it's Steven Tyler riding on a serpent that turns into an arrow pointing down to my junk. And so I had to show him.
You had to show everybody.
Yeah.
Man, what's he riding? A dinosaur?
It's a serpent.
A dragon? Serpent?
It's a serpent that turns into an arrow.
What if how much cooler would have been if the serpent had Dirk's face on it?
Ooh. Are you saying it doesn't?
Yeah, I'm just saying for that moment to be able to be like, dudes, both of y'all, check this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have everybody there.
You knew it was going to happen.
And on my thigh is Joe Perry pointing up to the serpent. So
nice. Yeah. And then on the other side, you've got the credits like Armageddon.
Yeah.
the movie.
I've Ben Affleck hugging Steven Tyler's daughter. So weird.
Hey, so how's everything going at the distillery? Like,
I'll let them answer this, Ben.
yeah, like we have a ton of people asking, hey, restaurants are now open to 75% or whatever, and do you guys have a good feel at all for when people can come check out the distillery, or is it just?
Man, we really don't. I don't want to come out in public and make enemies or burn any bridges, but we were told earlier this summer that when the positivity rate, I guess, is that the right word? So for all the testing that's happening, how many are coming back positive? When that rate was below 10%, that bars would get reopened. It's been below that for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and nothing's happened. So we're not really sure. Luckily for Balcones specifically, our business model is mostly distribution. I mean, we've been in this for a while. Our stuff's out there. What we do front of house is really about bringing people in and having a cool experience. So we're not getting to do that right now. But I got a lot of friends in this business that don't have anything in a liquor store, don't have a distributor. They're too small, or they're not taking new products right now, or whatever the deal is. What the business they do front of house is all they got, because in Texas we can't ship. And even through the front of house, even with doing curbside with the 2-bottle limit, people are pretty hamstrung on what they can do and can't do. So we're still plugging away. I mean, we're having a good year. But this situation is definitely has the potential to kind of widen the gap between how well established and how long you've been around is going to make a big difference if this drags on for much longer without a little bit of help. The other confusing part that people aren't necessarily aware of, if you don't deal with politics other than voting and like seeing who wins, if you're not actively like working with your industry that you're a part of, to interact with politicians. So the Texas legislature meets every 2 years. So they'll start meeting in January, they'll wrap up in April, and anything they decide on will take effect September 1st. So even if there were beneficial things for Texas distilleries that was to go down in the state legislature next year, we would be talking about things taking effect just about a year from now.
Right.
When we already know that, depending on which poll you're looking at, 30 to 60% of distilleries in the country, as well as in our state, might not be around in December if something doesn't happen. So it's a tricky thing, man. Yeah.
Can you imagine if they have those things called sunset laws, where a lot of things during the legislature get rolled into one thing. So for example, last year, the whole reason, my understanding at least, is that beer to go became a thing last September 1st was because the TABC was up for renewal in terms of certain things. And so somebody was smart enough to roll the beer to go into that. And so if Abbott had struck it down, we would have had no TABC for a period of time. Mm-hmm. So of course it was going to go through. Can you imagine what would have happened to these Texas breweries?
Yep. And Texas is lucky, man, for alcohol beverage, but with beer, with wine, and now with whiskey too. Like we've got really robust, solid, diverse, industry in all of those areas. And I don't know what it is, if there's still like some leftover kind of cultural stuff, like, oh, beer's for everybody and wine's for rich people, and whiskey's kind of like, you got a problem, you drink too much, like we don't want you around anyway. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely not a lot of parity. What beer is allowed to do, what wine's allowed to do, and what whiskey is allowed to do are very, very, very different. And it doesn't always make rational sense. I was talking to, I won't throw anybody on the bus. I was talking to a state senator the other day about these issues. And he compared it to the hospital complexes, and it's like, oh, there's a new wing and a new wing and a new wing. And you go to visit your family member who's sprained an ankle, and like it takes you 45 minutes, and you go up the wrong elevator. Oh, that elevator only goes to the 7th floor, and then you have to get off on the 5th and go across this walkway, and then because it just gets added on. I was comparing it to like 100-year-old house where it's like that obviously used to be a porch, now it's a bedroom, and now there's a porch on side that, and that got screened in, and then the garage got added. That's kind of how liquor laws are, at least in our state, and I think really in the country. And so the idea that we should probably start over and build intentionally from the ground up with a plan. It was nice to at least be talking to somebody who represents us, and they were like, yeah, man, your house analogy, I use the hospital, but we're saying the same thing, and it's overdue for some rational, intentional building and stepping. But
and ultimately everybody is Spinal Tap trying to find the stage and just, walking around forever and they can't find it.
I told him, he asked me for my review of how Sunset went, and I said shit sandwich, and he said, that's not real.
Can they say that?
That's not.
They can't write that, can they?
I use that once a week, so it's real.
Yeah,
I see that once a week.
I use that too.
Yep.
I mean, we don't mean it. I mean, we don't say it, but we don't really mean it.
Is there anything else before we shut her down that we need to say about bourbon or bourbon in Texas or Bourbon Heritage Month, since that's sort of our central theme for this week?
I mean, a lot of people consider bourbon the kind of, the American spirit. That could be debated. We were doing rum before anything. We were doing rye, I think, before bourbon. But it's definitely come to typify like some of the personality of what American whiskey is all about. And even though we're not from its homeland, it's a fun time, just like it is for global single malt growth. There's the variety of things people are trying in the different parts of the world where bourbon is now getting matured and made. It's super fun. It's a fun time. And Texas bourbon has been making a killer name for itself. And I would not be so bold to put us at the top of that list, but we've got a lot of fantastic friends that bourbon is their main thing, that have been killing it and taking awards left and right and making a name for what they do here. And we're just, we appreciate the support, and we have a lot of fun making what we make. So
do you guys have any music things you want to throw out there before we boogie?
Music things, man.
I've just been listening to a lot of loud, crunchy stuff. So I don't know.
So a lot of Kid Rock, huh?
Yellow Wolf. What?
Ball with the ball. Yep, that's my tattoo. If I'd show it to you, but
you've got Kid Rock and Yellow Wolf like riding serpents.
Yellow Rock. Actually, I saw Yellow Wolf at Bonnaroo the same day that I also saw Feist, the Beach Boys, and Bad Brains.
Perfect.
It's not a bad day.
Talk about a melting pot of interesting. Actually, also, and I saw radio that day too. So,
whose birthday was it just the other day? The daycare that my 2-year-old goes to, the lady that runs it is rad, and she's super into music. And I feel like every time we turn around, it's somebody's birthday or the anniversary of an album or something. And I want to say, man, maybe was it Stevie Wonder maybe this last week?
Ooh, I don't know if it was his birthday. I'm not sure.
Somebody's birthday. She told me when I dropped her off before I came into work, she was like, now I'm blanking on who it was. I want to say it was Stevie Wonder. She's like, we're doing that today.
I did listen to Songs in the Key of Life this morning.
Oh my God.
Incredible.
Yes. It's so good. Stevie's been on play in the car. I'm trying to get the kids indoctrinated.
Was it Ray Charles?
Yep.
Is that today, Ben, or yesterday?
That was yesterday, the 23rd.
Yeah. All right, let me throw this out there for everyone to check out, and I would love it for you guys to check out. There is a song that just came out today called "Walk with Me, Austin." Right?
Walk with Me, Austin.
And you guys can go find it on Spotify. And it involved 41 different Austin musicians, singers, rappers. And it kind of started, I believe this was a movement that started in Louisville and moved out to different cities. And so some of the Austin legislators got this thing going. And we've probably talked a few times on this, on the Whisky Talk. I know on the Ben and Skin Show, I've talked about the Black Pumas, which is a band that we love. And their band leader, Adrian Quesada, and he's won a Grammy before with his Latin group, Grupo Fantasma. But he was staked with putting together this song that involved 41 different musicians with different backgrounds. And so he took all this and pieced it together and played on it and produced it. And I think it's really, really good. And it's a cool thing because it's about bringing people together. And I was just so impressed because, you know, in our history, we have We Are the World and, you know, We Are Stars was the heavy metal one from the 80s, if you remember that. but there's a lot of times where people do this stuff and try to bring this together. And I didn't.
Self-destruction. Come on, man.
Oh yeah,
Self-destruction's
absolutely. We get the West Coast rappers. So Self-Destruction was more the East Coast, but they brought in some West Coast guys. But this is a very difficult thing to pull off, I think.
Yeah.
And make it sound like it belongs in the same song. And I'm very biased and partial, but I believe he did it. And so if you get a chance to go check it out, it's called Walk With Me, Austin. So
I was gonna say, have you seen the classic We Are the World recording session footage that everyone's seen, where it pans around and you've got Dylan and you've got, Springsteen and Willie Nelson? Have you seen that in a while?
It's been a long time. You talking about?
You gotta go back and watch
video.
Yeah. For anybody who lived through it when it was happening,
right?
And I go back and I'm like, this still works, man. It's pretty rad.
You know what else is great? That's sort of. Oh, there you go, Benny.
Yep.
You know what else is great that was before that I love, especially sonically from a production standpoint? The Band-Aid song, Do They Know It's Christmas, has a very cool, overall tone to it. And rhythmically, it's interesting. And that had a lot of really good British, musicians on it at the time. But it's a hard thing to pull off and make it sound coherent. Like there's Latin artists in the middle of this, and then there's rappers on jazz music. And it's like he had to figure out a way to pull all this thing together. And I think he did. I didn't know he was working on it. And I woke up this morning and saw it, was like, what is this? So check that out if you get a chance.
I'd like to suggest a song too. This is a song that's near and dear to my heart. I know that often when you're getting ready for your day and you got a big stressful day, you make eye contact with yourself in the mirror and you kind of have a soundtrack playing. And I'd like to tip my cap to the classic song "You're the Best" by Joe Esposito.
Oh yes,
it's featured in the Karate Kid, because sometimes I make eye contact with myself and I say, "You are the best around."
Sometimes I have this similar situation, and what I go with. Do we have any Will Oldham, Bonnie Prince Billy fans in the house?
I don't. I'm unfamiliar.
All right. So Bonnie Prince Billy is his pseudonym, but his real name is Will Oldham. Does a lot of kind of folk Americana singer-songwriter stuff. But he did a covers EP called Ask Forgiveness, which makes me think maybe he didn't. Yeah, we go. Maybe he didn't ask permission to do any of these covers that he did on this. But it just goes to show you how the kind of the tone and the timbre and the approach and the mood of whoever's doing it can completely alter how a song comes across. But one of the most moving tunes on this little solo, I mean, the whole EP is just him and an acoustic guitar, and it's beautiful and it's really emotionally dynamic. And he did R. Kelly, World's Greatest.
Oh man!
And hearing him be like, I am a mountain, I am a tall tree. It just reads so different. My guy's leaving. But anyway, Ask Forgiveness EP by Bonnie Prince Billy.
I'll check that out.
So you're the best, but I'm the world's greatest. That's all I wanted to get to.
Hey, respect. Yeah.
So I've got 3 ideas.
Okay.
So one I messaged you about the other day, Skin, and that's because you mentioned covering R. Kelly, but Sarah Jaffe covered a Drake song. And it just slipped my mind. Marvin's Room.
Yeah, and I had not heard that.
Yeah, but he was in the studio the other day with Sarah Jaffe and a bunch of other really awesome artists. And she, I'm pretty sure it was Marvin. I'm pretty sure, but it's great. Looking at an album that I've actually been listening to a lot that is not kind of like doom metal and sludge and punk stuff is actually Coulter Wall released a record
it's a good
about
album.
a month ago. It's probably kind of hard to see here, but it's called Western Swing. So he's from Calgary, and we might have talked about him a little bit before, but it's a really, really great record. He's got a soulful voice. He's only 21, 22.
And anybody who's digging, anybody who's been really enjoying kind of some of the everything from Jason Isbell to Sturgill Simpson to Chris Stapleton, kind of Tyler Childers, all that stuff that's been going on with country the last few years. Paul Coffin from Texas. Culture Wall and Charlie Crockett. If those guys aren't on your short list for current Texas dudes that you should be paying attention to, they should be.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Charlie and Paul. Those are great guys. Also, while we're doing it, is the Texas Gentlemen.
Oh,
Ooh,
yeah.
I think they're excellent. They just put out a record about a month ago called Floor It. They're
Happy Doobie.
What's that?
They've got that one intro song on their other record called Happy Doobie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Bondurant Woman is really good. But yeah, check out their new album if you haven't, called Floor It. It's got some really great 70s influence.
You guys need to get out of Dallas more and come see us, because we've had the Texas Gentlemen. We've had Charlie Crockett.
Oh,
Yeah, play at the distillery.
At the distillery. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So you guys just need to get out of the house.
Actually, no. Hold on. So speaking of, I live walking distance. Laura and I, pre-COVID, would walk to the Kessler. They're about the first show back is going to be Wesley Geiger. Is it Texas Gentlemen?
It's Texas Gentlemen and Charlie
Crockett.
Yep.
All three of those guys have played at our distillery. And we were just looking, they're doing back-to-back nights. We're trying to get tickets to go see it. But
so had all those guys.
Small world.
I really go ahead, Benny.
I'm just curious, where do you guys set up for shows?
We'll usually
I've seen the building.
Yeah, bring in like a trailer outside for stage and put up a tent and stuff like in the parking lot.
Okay, awesome, man. I can't wait to do that. Let's go.
We try to do the music as good as the rest of it. Hopefully we can keep doing it. Coulter's on my short list. I want to get Coulter Wall in.
So is Coulter a Texas guy? No, you said he's Calgary.
Calgary. Yeah.
I'm going to listen to Coulter Wall tonight. That's exciting.
This is actually, though, I'll leave you with this. This is actually what I've been listening to.
I don't know what that is.
Look at that, Ben.
That is I've seen that. That's a Christmas classic called "Let's Go Fartin' in a Santa Suit."
Yeah,
a genius made that.
Yeah, it's by one Ben Rogers.
I'm not familiar with it. Is this? Are we still in the rap genre?
So no, we had back in the day we had this. My wife had bought this little tiny Santa. And he is holding a tray, and it was plastic, and you could use a remote control to walk it around and deliver drinks, but it's it didn't work well because you stop and the drinks would fall over. But it had a little microphone, and you could talk through the Santa, so it looked like the Santa was singing. And so I would always sing to my kids, "Let's go farting in a Santa suit, Santa suit, Santa suit. Let's go farting in a Santa suit and have us a real good time." And so for years I sang that to them, and then I decided to go ahead and go to the studio and record it. And so we put it on Spotify.
Really good recording. It's like high quality. Like you use real microphones and everything. So stupid.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Some farts are big, some farts are small, some farts do not spell at all. It's Christmas time, and here's your gift. I'm bending over and letting one rip.
Nice.
There you go.
That's I was gonna say, if you had stuck within the hip hop rap genre, there's a pretty rich tradition of Christmas songs, but you went elsewhere with it. Okay.
And that's what's funny is my dad, when Skin and I were in a rap band for a million years, my dad would always say, "I'm gonna say this to you in all seriousness. You and Skin need to record a Christmas song." He told me that like 30 times.
It's an American tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Like no other.
So Coffee Nods. What is that then? Yeah, Coulter Wall. There he is.
Is Coffee Nods on Spotify, Ben?
Yep, Coffee Nods is on Spotify. Coffee Nods is an album so I wanted to be able to tell my kids why it took me 10 years to graduate from college and I'm not a doctor. And so I was like, in 2006, I was like, I'm going to record a rap album just to kind of have it for my kids so they can know what I was doing with my life. And I kind of told my life story with it. And it was pretty cool. I got some really great producers to produce on it. Skin produced on it. This guy S1, who ended up winning Grammys, a big producer, produced some songs on it. And it was a lot of fun. And a coffee nod, I named it that because a coffee nod, if you go back to Pulp Fiction, when the wolf shows up at the house to solve the situation, he's in a tuxedo, right? Winston Wolfe.
Mm-hmm.
And they had just shot a guy's head off in the back of a car.
Yeah.
And in the middle of all the chaos, he asks Tarantino to make him a cup of coffee. In the middle of all the chaos, he takes a sip of the coffee and he looks at Tarantino and he goes, "That's a coffee nod." The international sign of that's some good shit right there. So it's kind of what we do when we sip Balcones too. We're like, coffee nod.
Absolutely.
Nice. I've never heard that story.
Yep. The knowing
That's
nod
great.
of respect.
Coffee nod.
You are now rocking with the coffee nods.
Yep.
Hot damn.
All right, gentlemen.
Well,
Cheers.
Yeah.
hey, Bourbon Heritage Month. Good folks, good music.
Yeah. Thank you guys. This is a blast.
All right, we'll see you next time on Whiskey Talk, in which something magical will happen because it's episode 8. So I can promise you it'll be incredible.
I think we'll probably be talking about single barrel, the Ben and Skin single barrel at that point.
Oh, what?
Sweat. Maybe. I think. No, we will for sure.
I can't wait. And in honor of that, we'll have Troy Aikman on since he's number 8. So that's all coming up next on Whiskey Talk. Thank you, everybody. Of course, if you're ever in the Waco area, we encourage you to check out the distillery there in Waco, Balcones Distilling. If you're ever in the Dallas area, we encourage you to listen to the Ben and Skin Show 2 to 5 on 97.1 The Mighty Eagle. And then, of course, you can always download podcasts. And right now, you can go listen to Coulter Wall or The Coffee Nods or Let's Go Farting in a Santa Suit on Spotify. So thank you, America. We love you. Imbibe safely. And thank you for hanging with us.
Thanks, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.